San Francisco 49ers news is all about the schedule right now, because once the NFL puts the dates on the board, the whole conversation changes. Niners news today is not about guesses in the dark anymore. It is about matchups, timing, travel, and whether this team is built to hit the ground running or stumble out of the gate. And when you look at this first stretch, there is a real chance for the Niners to make a statement before the rest of the league even figures out what hit them. The season opens in Australia against the Rams, and that alone tells you the league is not handing San Francisco a soft landing. This is a road game on paper, but let's be real, the atmosphere is going to be heavy with Niners fan energy. When a team like the 49ers shows up in a setting like that, the crowd can tilt things faster than people expect. The Rams might be the trendy pick in some corners, and sure, they've got the kind of roster that makes people talk themselves into them every year. But this is exactly the kind of spot where San Francisco can punch first. That Week 1 game feels bigger than just an opener. It feels like a tone setter. If the Niners walk out of that one with a win, the whole season starts to feel sharper, louder, and a little more dangerous for everybody else. Then comes the home opener, and that is where the Niners really have a chance to stack momentum. Miami comes into Levi's, and this is the kind of matchup the 49ers have to handle like a contender. No excuses, no slow start, no messing around. Miami is not the type of team San Francisco should be chasing around for 4 quarters if this roster is truly ready for a deep run. This is where good teams separate themselves from hopeful teams. Good teams take care of business at home, period. And for all the San Francisco 49ers news chatter about style and star power, this is the football part that matters most. Win the games you are supposed to win, and suddenly the schedule starts to tilt in your favor. Arizona follows, and that is where division games always try to sneak in and bite somebody. The Cardinals may not be a favorite in many people's minds, but division games do not care about your preseason rankings. They care about execution, toughness, and who blinks first. This is the kind of game where the Niners cannot afford to get cute. They have to lean on what makes them dangerous, stay patient, and pull away when the moment opens up. That is the difference between a team that is collecting wins and a team that is collecting anxiety. And right here, in Niners news terms, this should be a game where San Francisco proves it can handle the pressure without overcomplicating things. Then the schedule starts throwing some real heat. Denver comes in next, and this is where the first loss might show up. Not because San Francisco cannot play with them, but because the matchup feels a little ugly in the trenches. Denver is the kind of team that can turn a clean-looking game into a street fight. And those are the games that expose whether your offensive line is ready for a long season or just looks nice in theory. If the Niners get knocked around here, it is not because they are fake. It is because Denver can make life miserable in ways that do not always show up in the highlight reel. That is the trap. That is the stress point. And in a season like this, that is the kind of game that tells you more than a blowout ever could. And then Seattle shows up, and now you are staring at a stretch that can either keep San Francisco flying or knock it back a step. That is the thing about this team. When the offensive line gets tested and the pass rush starts coming in waves, every little weakness gets magnified. Seattle is not the type of opponent you can just out-talent and move on from. They can make it messy, they can make it physical, they can make you earn every inch. So if the Niners come out of these first 5 weeks at 3-2, that is not a disaster. That is a checkpoint. It is not glamorous, but it tells you the schedule is doing what schedules are supposed to do. It is asking questions. The only thing that matters is whether San Francisco answers them the right way. The middle portion of this schedule is where things get fascinating, because this is the stretch where contenders either start separating from the pack or quietly reveal the cracks nobody wanted to admit were there. And if you are following San Francisco 49ers news closely right now, you can already feel the tension building around one simple question. Is this roster actually built to survive the grind? Or is it built to look good on paper until the pressure hits. The first test after that rough Seattle stretch comes on Monday Night Football against Washington, and this game has all the ingredients for a statement win. Prime time, Levi's Stadium rocking, the national audience watching Brock Purdy again. And honestly, this feels like one of those nights where the Niners remind everybody that depth still matters in the NFL. Washington has talent, no doubt about it, but there is a difference between having a dangerous quarterback and having a complete football team. Jaden Daniels can absolutely create chaos, but if San Francisco controls the line of scrimmage and forces Washington to play a physical 60-minute game, the advantage starts swinging toward Kyle Shanahan's side pretty quickly. And this is where the conversation around Brock Purdy gets interesting again, because every season, there are still people waiting for the real Purdy to show up. Like the guy has not already won massive games and operated one of the league's toughest offenses under pressure. At this point, it feels almost stubborn. The reality is simpler than people want it to be. When Purdy is protected, this offense hums. When the run game works, he becomes surgical. That is not luck. That is structure mixed with talent. Big difference. Then comes Atlanta. And this is one of those sneaky games that can ruin a season's rhythm if you are not locked in. Cross-country travel always sounds manageable until your offense suddenly looks half a second slow and your defense starts missing tackles in space. That is how weird road losses happen in the NFL. One sleepy quarter turns into a problem that follows you for 2 weeks on sports talk radio. Niners fan knows exactly what that feels like because we have seen these games before. Everything looks fine on paper until kickoff happens and suddenly the energy feels off. But this is where maturity matters. Veteran teams understand trap games before they happen. And if San Francisco truly learned from the collapses and inconsistencies that haunted stretches of recent seasons, this is the type of game they survive instead of donate away. Not every win needs fireworks. Sometimes a real contender wins ugly, gets on the plane, and moves on without apologizing for it. Then the bye week arrives, and honestly, the timing could not be better. This roster is talented, but talent means nothing if key players are dragging themselves into November at 70%. Christian McCaffrey's health becomes part of the conversation again here, because the entire offense changes depending on what version of him shows up down the stretch. A healthy McCaffrey is like a cheat code hidden inside Shanahan's playbook. Defensive coordinators start guessing instead of reacting, and that is where San Francisco becomes terrifying. But if the workload catches up to him again, suddenly the margin for error shrinks fast. That is why this season feels so important. There is this underlying sense that the Niners know the current core still has one more real Super Bowl punch left in it. But the clock is ticking louder now. Windows in the NFL do not slam shut politely. They collapse like a stadium light going out in the middle of the fourth quarter. Out of the bye, the Raiders game is going to be emotional chaos in the Bay Area. You already know the crowd split is going to be loud, emotional, and probably a little unhinged in the best possible football way. Silver and black everywhere, red and gold everywhere. Somebody's uncle yelling about Joe Montana in the parking lot before sunrise. Classic Northern California football atmosphere. But once the ball is kicked, this matchup leans heavily towards San Francisco. The Raiders may be rebuilding pieces of their identity, but rebuilding teams usually struggle against organizations that already know exactly who they are. And the Niners, for all the criticism they get nationally, still have one of the clearest identities in football. Run hard, defend violently, punish mistakes. That formula travels. Then comes Dallas, and you can already hear the television promos warming up weeks in advance. Niners versus Cowboys always turns into theater. It does not matter what the records are. It does not matter who the analysts pick. The rivalry drags extra emotion into the room every single time. And honestly, this matchup has become psychological at this point. San Francisco has spent years walking into these games like the older brother who already knows how the fight ends. That mental edge matters more than people realize. Because when Dallas starts feeling pressure against the Niners, the entire game changes. One bad turnover becomes two. One stalled drive becomes panic. And Shanahan teams are dangerous when they smell hesitation. That is why this matchup keeps tilting red and gold lately. San Francisco does not just beat Dallas physically, they make them uncomfortable mentally. So when the Niners walk out of Week 10, sitting at 7-2 in this projection, it suddenly feels very real. Not fantasy, not off-season hype, real. At that point, the NFC playoff picture starts taking shape around them. Levi's Stadium gets louder, national media starts circling back around, and all the conversations about whether the championship window is still open start sounding a whole lot different. But here is the catch, and every Niners fan knows it deep down. The hardest part of the season is still waiting around the corner. The back half of the season is where the whole story gets judged, and this is exactly why people tune into Niners news today in the first place. The early wins matter, the midseason grind matters, but this final stretch is where a good team either proves it can finish or gets exposed for playing highlight reel football without enough bite. And for San Francisco, the closing run is loaded with everything you would expect from a playoff contender. Travel, pressure, big names, hard coaching, and no room to coast. The Chargers game jumps out immediately because it comes on a short week, and that is the kind of spot that can trip up even a strong roster. Thursday Night Football does not care about your reputation. It cares about who recovers faster, who handles the game plan cleaner, and who can survive the weird rhythm of a quick turnaround. Jim Harbaugh brings that old-school edge everywhere he goes, so this is not some soft, friendly matchup where everybody just shakes hands and walks away. This feels like a real test of discipline. Still, the Niners should like this kind of game. When San Francisco is locked in, they can make a talented team look ordinary by controlling pace, leaning on efficiency, and refusing to beat themselves. That is the kind of ugly but effective football that travels in December. Then comes Kansas City, and now you are talking about the kind of opponent that instantly changes the temperature in the room. Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have been a headache for a lot of teams, but for the Niners, it is deeper than that. There is history here. There is scar tissue. There is the kind of competitive tension that lingers long after the final whistle. Niners fan does not need a reminder of the weight these games carry. The matchup itself is enough. And honestly, this is where the margin gets thin. If San Francisco is going to win in Arrowhead, it has to play nearly perfect football. No giveaways, no coverage busts, no wasted red zone trips. Because against Kansas City, wasted opportunities turn into regret in a hurry. That is just the way it goes. But the key is not just surviving that game, it is how the Niners respond after it. That is what separates a team with backbone from a team that folds when the schedule stiffens. And the Eagles game at Levi's is exactly the kind of bounce-back spot that tells you whether San Francisco is built for the whole chase or only the easy parts of it. Philadelphia always brings force. They always bring size. They always bring noise. So this is not a spot where the Niners can drift into the game and hope talent carries them. They need urgency. They need edge. They need that veteran mentality where every snap feels like it matters because, well, it does. This is the kind of game that feels like a playoff preview even if it is not labeled that way. Every mistake gets magnified. Every big hit shifts momentum. Every third down stop matters like it belongs in January. And that is where San Francisco can cash in if the offense is efficient and the defense gets after the quarterback the way it is supposed to. If they win this one, it is a huge signal to the rest of the NFC that the Niners are not just surviving the back end of the schedule, they are still hunting. Then we get the final game against Arizona, and this is where the schedule gives San Francisco a chance to breathe just enough before the postseason. No drama, no pressure cooker division finale against Seattle, no last-second chaos waiting to ruin everything. Just a game the Niners should handle if they want to enter the playoffs with confidence. That matters more than people admit. Momentum is not everything, but it is not nothing either. A team that walks into the playoffs feeling sharp is a lot scarier than a team that limps in and starts searching for answers on the fly. And that is why the 12-5 prediction makes sense here. It is not some wild, reckless dream. It is a realistic read on a team with enough talent to handle tough moments, enough experience to survive the grind, and enough firepower to win the games that matter most. Of course, it all depends on health. That is the giant asterisk hanging over every Niners season now. But if Brock Purdy stays upright, if Christian McCaffrey stays effective, and if the offensive line holds together just enough to keep the machine moving, then this team absolutely has the ceiling to live in that 12-win neighborhood again. So now the question is simple, Niners fan. Do you buy the 12-5 prediction, or do you think this schedule is a little more dangerous than it looks on the surface? Drop your record prediction in the comments and tell me where you think the Niners stumble, because that is where the real conversation starts. And if you are rocking with San Francisco 49ers news, make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with another Niners fan, and support the channel so we can keep growing this thing toward 2,000 subscribers. Turn on notifications too, because Niners News Today is not slowing down, and you do not want to miss what comes next.